Stress is a part of everyday life for all of us, whether it's the stress of something in our personal lives, like a relationship that's not working out, or something that appears to be outside our control, like living in a noisy environment. No one is immune from stress, but there are things we can do to deal with it, like learning how to relax and let go of our worries so that we take back control of our lives. Over the next 4 weeks, we'll be finding out what causes stress, how it affects us, and most importantly, how we can survive it.
Noise.
Traffic queues.
Politicians.
People wasting my time.
Shops where people really haven't any time to serve you.
Loss of family and friends.
Finding one really good definition of stress is surprisingly difficult. There are so many forms that it comes in. It's getting worked up, feeling trapped in a situation that we can't control. It's also what we feel when we're struggling to cope with circumstances that seem to be getting on top of us.
What's happening? Shh! You have to tell me what you're doing.
We've got to change the menu.
Why? Why?
Listen, he's out there. He's out. He's flat out. So Andre's...
Who is?
What?
Who is out?
Kurt, who do you think? Henry Kissinger?
What do you mean out?
He's drunk.
Drunk?
Drunk, soused, potted, inebriated. Got it?
I don't believe it.
Neither do I. Perhaps it's a dream. No, it's not a dream. We're stuck with it. Right.
We can all think of different things that get us worked up or stressed, but stress itself comes from just two basic sources.
Well, stress can affect us from the external environment, from the noise and the whole environmental factors around us. They can come from our family, come from our workplace, come from a whole range of environments, and these impinge on us. And obviously, the more you have happening to you at one point in time, the more stressed you're likely to be. Stress can also come from your internal world. That is your personality, the way in which you cope with the world, how you deal with people in general. So there are factors intrinsic to you as a person which can create and make you more vulnerable to the stresses in the environment around you.
Over the past 6 months, Professor Cary Cooper has been collaborating with writer and broadcaster Murray Watts to produce a book on stress to accompany this series. During the next 4 weeks, they'll be helping us to understand how stress affects our daily lives.
When I get onto the M6, it's definitely a problem.
To what extent, though, does stress appear to be a product of the hectic pace of today's world?
Quite a lot of people would say that stress has been around a long time. We've had it for centuries. I mean, what's so new about stress now in the world? And I think my response to that would be that, there's been a lot of change. I mean, we're undergoing enormous change, societal change, economic change, technological change, and all these kinds of changes produce a lot of stress. Particularly, for example, the social changes. I mean, 2 out of every 3 women now work. 20 years ago, that wasn't the case. We have new technology in the office. We have internationalization in terms of economic change. And at the same time, we have higher mobility. A lot of people moving around away from their extended families, so they have no social support. So I think that's why now stress is a problem. Stress is a disease of the late 20th century and will be a disease of the 21st century.
Stress may always have been part of the human condition, but there's never been as much interest in the way that it affects us as there is today. We all think we suffer from it. We'd all love to be free from it. But before I could write about this, I needed some sort of definition. What is stress? Experts describe it in different ways.
Well, stress means different things to different people. To myself, as a doctor and stress researcher, I take it as a force, like electricity, if you like, which acts on the body and sets up certain stresses within it, but makes it perform. So I think stress has many good features, but like electricity, if you overload a person, then you can get all sorts of problems arising, which gives stress its bad image.
Stress is when we lose confidence in ourselves. When we feel completely confident, completely sure we can manage, then When something new happens or something more is given to us to deal with, we see it as a challenge. You know, it's a challenge we're going to master. But as soon as you start to think, I can't cope with this, I can't manage this, then the challenge turns into a stress.
One of the ways in which we are all susceptible to stress is the effect that it has on us physically. Whenever we're faced with stressful situations, our bodies automatically gear themselves up to deal with it. With only 10 minutes before transmission, Dr. Malcolm Carruthers is wiring me up to machines that will monitor my stress levels as I present the 9 o'clock news. My blood pressure and heart rate are going to be recorded throughout. And what would you expect to appear on that machine? What kind of reaction would you expect me to have going into the 9 o'clock news and during it?
Well, just at the time that you go into it, what I would expect is a sudden surge of both heart rate and blood pressure to the sort of levels that you're getting quite heavy exercise. So a very definite marked stress reaction.
Right. Let's see if you're
just
right.
Hold that.
and just one other point. I normally feel very relaxed going into the 9 o'clock news.
Yes.
Unless there's a late breaking story, which we haven't actually got tonight.
Good.
Would you still expect to see those surges, even though I feel in myself that I'm pretty relaxed about it?
Yes, I would, because even though you're well adapted to stress, still the body tends to react within, but probably because you're feeling calm, though the sort of peak of heart rate and blood pressure may not be as big, but it'll be fascinating to see.
Right, let's go and have a look.
Sure.
Good evening. Police hunting IRA bombers have arrested a man and a woman in a raid on a house in the West London suburb of Northolt. A cache of arms and explosives was later found in a lock-up garage a few miles away. The arrests are said to... When we're under stress, we're usually aware of some of the more immediate and obvious physical symptoms. Our hearts start racing, we feel our stomachs churning, and the palms of our hands often get sweaty. I honestly can't remember being aware of any of these symptoms while I've been presenting the news, but it'll be interesting to see if the monitoring devices do record any significant fluctuations in my stress levels. And John Smith and Brian Gould will contest the leadership of the Labour Party in a July election. More, of course, on Newsnight on BBC Two at 10:30, but that is the 9 o'clock news tonight. Good night. Well, Doctor, how did I do?
Very cool.
Really?
Mr. Super Cool, if you like. Really, your heart rate went up to just over 100 when you were beginning to read the news, but then it came down and only went up to about 90, 95 during the active speaking parts, coming down to about 70 during the links.
And that's normal. You would expect that, is it?
That's normal, but I would have expected your heart rate to go much higher for live television. It should have been much more of a turn-on than it was.
I've been doing it for too long. In some ways, I wasn't surprised with these results, because after all, newsreading is something that I do many times each week. We're far more likely to be affected by stress if we're suddenly presented with a difficult situation that we've never faced before.
Failure to adjust to change is one of the greatest sources of stress in our lives. A few years ago, I heard a true story about a bishop going to a local parish church where he met a church warden who'd been there for 40 years. He said to the man, "You must have seen a lot of changes here in your lifetime." The man replied, "Yes, and I have opposed every single one of them." Well, our reactions to change may not be as extreme as that, but we do find it very hard to adjust, particularly when changes are sudden. They can overwhelm us. Financial crisis, a broken engagement, the death of a loved one, redundancy. We find it almost impossible to live life as it is now.
Changes in printing technology and new working conditions triggered the disturbances in Wapping in 1986. One of the many people who lost their jobs after the strike was Ron Henson, who'd been in the industry since the age of 14.
When I lost my job and knew that I hadn't got the remotest chance of getting it back, I was 55 years of age. I think the worst part where the stress has caught up with me is not losing my job, it's the after effects of having lost it. It's going through the traumatic experiences of trying to find alternative employment and going down to your local Department of Employment office and having to sign as an unemployed person. Now, I know there are millions of people doing it now, and there's been hundreds of thousands in the past, but I never saw myself having to do that. I never considered that would ever happen to me, not at the age of 55, and it become an indignity, if you like. You seem to have lost your values. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm saying that that's how it affected me. And I fully understand there's other people that are unemployed, but I seem to resent the fact that I was made to have to go down to the Department of Employment to sign on as an unemployed person. I was made to do that. It was through no fault of my own.
Well, thank you very much for calling. I really.
It's not just when you are employed by other people that difficulties can arise. The property business that Davina Taylor worked hard to create collapsed in the 90s recession, leaving her with huge debts.
I wasn't expecting this to happen to me. I'd never lost money in my business all the time. That sounds a kind of arrogant thing to say, but I've been very lucky. I survived the 73 crash. I survived the 80s crash. So for the first time in my life, I was facing something that had never happened before. It also happened, if I'm honest, at a time in my life when I was rather looking forward to retiring and taking it easy. I'd brought up 5 children altogether. And I'm not a young woman anymore. I wanted to take it easy and relax. The idea of having to start all over again is horrendously daunting. I mean, you just think, gosh, what was that all about? The first thing that happened is my sleeping went. I couldn't sleep. I would wake up several times in the night, literally in a pool of perspiration. All sorts of totally irrational things go through your head. You feel as if your head is actually going to physically explode. Terrible palpitations. You think you're going to have a heart attack. You want to kind of stop the world and get off. The second thing that happened to me was that I would find that I overreacted dramatically to quite ordinary situations. So, in other words, if somebody phoned me up and said, don't come for dinner tomorrow, after all, we've had to cancel the dinner party. Instead of thinking, well, they've cancelled the dinner party, or whatever it was, I would think, I've upset them in some way. So it was a form of paranoia. You begin to think that you're being rejected for other reasons. You start to think there's something really wrong with you.
Daily drama is the essential ingredient of any soap, but a sequence of real-life tragedies were almost overwhelming for EastEnders actor Mike Reed.
I lost my son, I lost my granddaughter, I lost my best friend, I lost my brother-in-law. All in a matter of 3 years. And it was an extremely stressful period for me. Carrying on working for me was an absolute must. It was a necessity, and it's another part that helped me to carry on with life in general. If it hadn't have been for me having to learn scripts, having to go to work of a night time doing cabaret, and hi there friends, how are you? I had to do that. I needed to do that. That added with many other things that, I got involved in gardening, which I never ever did before. I used to mow the lawns and that was my lot. But when I lost my son and then my granddaughter, I found that by going into the garden and working in the garden, weeding and seeding and growing my own plants was a great relief. A great relief. I found that I was always thinking about Mark, as I am, as we sit here today. But I find that I'd see a weed and for a few seconds I wouldn't think about Mark. And then for another few seconds I wouldn't think about Mark because I was absolutely concentrating on what I was doing, and it was a tremendous help for me. The way that I found that I got rid of a lot of tension, that I used to go into the garden and on my own. And I used to go down to the back of the garden and I'd sit there and collapse sometimes. And I'd cry and I'd cry and God, I'd cry. And it released a lot of tension for me. And I can do that. I can do that now. I can go out tonight and when I get built up inside, I go down there, and I do a lot of crying.
Understanding life events, I think, is very critical to understanding and appreciating how we deal with stress in our working environments, domestic life, or whatever. If there are a lot of things happening to you, if somebody's ill in your family, if somebody's just died, if you've just had to move house, and all these events occurred within a 6 to a 12-month period, it's going to adversely affect you. It's going to affect your ability to cope and could lead to stress-related illnesses. A lot of research has been done on this, it's called adverse life events. And actually, these events have been scaled. So certain events are much more stressful than other events, like the death of a family member, all the way down to, for example, even Christmas can be a stressful life event. So there's a whole range of events, and these events can affect you and affect your behavior and how you cope with life in general.
It's not just major life events that cause us stress. We often feel equally powerless in dealing with the more minor, everyday occurrences in life that cause our stress levels to rise.
One of the things that really gets to me is that 7 o'clock every Friday morning, the bin lorry reverses down this street with a loudspeaker system saying the vehicle is reversing. It repeats this message about 50 times. Well, if you've been woken up half the night by your children and are trying to sleep that last precious half an hour or an hour, it's somehow very invasive, and yet there's nothing you can do about it. Dogs barking all day long, or hi-fis going, or parties late at night, anything that we feel is outside our control, and our stress levels go up.
It's the things you can't control that I think get me worked up more than anything else, even though I know that's totally irrational and unreasonable. It's like we're doing a Kilroy in the open air, and we're in Spain doing Kilroys on the Costa. We'd all arrived there, beautiful blue skies. On the day we're going to do the show, it's threatening to rain, the wind is blowing, and everybody's saying we've got to cancel the show. Now that really got me stressed, more than anything else, and yet it's the one thing I can't do anything about. And the fact that on that occasion I might have my wife saying, don't be silly, you can't do anything about it, so you might as well forget about it and get it, doesn't help. That just makes it worse. That compounds the kind of aggravation, because yes, of course I know I can't change the weather. I don't need to be told that I can't change the weather, as well as having a problem with the weather.
I think the things that bother me most and get me most uptight are traffic queues, when trains don't run and buses don't turn up, the small things that seem unimportant really in the big scheme of things, but are an everyday part of life. And if it all goes wrong, it's a very bad start to the day if it takes you 2 hours to get to work.
For many people, the workplace is a major source of everyday stress. We immediately think of the stereotype business executive rushing around with his portable phone in hand as the most likely victim of stress. But in fact, the main cause of work stress is not so obvious.
It's a bit of a myth that it's the executive who, is rushing about from meeting to meeting, who's the most stressed person. Executives, of course, do experience stress. That mustn't be minimised. But the people who are actually more stressed are those people who have very little control over what they're doing. So typically it is somebody who is doing something very monotonous and who can't make any changes in it, who can't change the speed at which the production line is operating, who can't suggest any ways in which the task could be done differently.
For me, the main stress on the production line is actually making sure that we're able to keep our machinery running so that we can produce the amount that's required for the particular shift that we're actually on.
It's such a repetitive job that I think you do get a lot of stress with it.
You can't relax at all. You've got to keep going the whole of the time you're here. You can't just think, oh, I'll relax for half an hour. You must keep working at 100% the whole of the time you're here. You can't relax at all.
Stress-related problems cost British industry around £7 billion every year. According to one recent survey, however, surprisingly few company managers have adopted policies to remedy the situation.
Some of the large companies now do employ counsellors or buy in counselling from other agencies. And they find not only that it improves the well-being of the employees, but also that it saves the company's money. And this it has been known from American research that for every $1 you invest in counselling services for employees, you get back at least $3 in improved performance, less time off work, and so on.
There can be fewer more stressful situations than bringing up a young family. Jan Stanton and Peter Beard now have 4 children, but their first caused a complete change in their lifestyle.
When I first had my first baby, it totally disrupted our lives. I mean, she turned our lives upside down from the word go. She actually slept through the night when she was 2.5 years old for the first time. And I remember that period through a sort of haze of total, utter tiredness. So everything you did just took that much longer to do because you were just so incredibly tired. And at the same time, you were trying to cope with these huge adjustments in your life. I mean, there's adjustments of money as well, because I'd stopped the job, and there's the sort of financial pressures, as well as all the sort of emotional pressures and the complete change in lifestyle. And you get things out of perspective. You tend to lose your temper more, usually with each other. I mean, that's what we did. You know, Pete would walk through the door in the evening, and I remember one occasion sort of meeting him at the front door, handing him the baby and walking out. I think there's a lot of learning that goes into it, and I don't think people recognise that. I wasn't prepared at all for being a mother. I mean, I didn't know one end of a baby from another, but it was assumed that because I was female, I would.
Ben, would you say I could be mistaken for a bin man?
No. You don't look that good in the mornings.
Today's woman, she's soft, feminine, runs her own company as well as her family, and still has time for passion.
Cow.
I always feel that it's dangerous to sit down and read a glossy women's magazine, because what that magazine is always telling us is that as a woman, you must be the perfect woman, the perfect wife, the perfect lover, the perfect mother, the perfect daughter, aunt, sister-in-law, colleague, and of course you must be successful at your career while remaining beautiful and a good cook all the time. And nobody can possibly achieve that, and yet that's what women are being presented with. And women are very good at blaming themselves. They're experts in blaming themselves. And so when they can't get everything right, everything perfect, they say, I ought to have done that better. And so they're very good at creating their own stress.
Whatever other causes of stress there may be, there is certainly a great deal of truth in the idea that when it comes to creating stress, we ourselves are often the worst culprits. It's our own individual personalities and our reactions that provide the key to understanding stress. We need to get to know ourselves a lot better if we're to learn how to deal effectively with stress, and that is exactly what we'll be looking at in the next programme in this series. If you'd like more information on the subject of stress, the BBC book which accompanies this series is now available from bookshops. Written by Professor Cary Cooper and Murray Watts, it's called Relax, Dealing with Stress, and it costs £5.99.